Hello again. Today's topic, rules of the road, or in this case, rules of writing. We all hate them, but we can't live without them. A few weeks ago, I was on a small island called Isla Mujeres off the coast of the Yucatan. The population there is only about 2,500 and the number of automobiles probably about 40. Most people there travel by moped or golf cart. They have good roads on Isla Mujeres and traffic signs where you would expect them to be, but most drivers ignore the signs. As you might guess, the optimum speeds of mopeds and golf carts are relatively low, and people are friendly and courteous on the road. They can and do generally ignore the stop signs because of these reasons. But in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, with 6 million people and what seems like twice that number of mega-big, mega-fast vehicles, if we did not follow the traffic rules, that population of 6 million would be reduced fairly quickly. In other words, the rules of the road are there for a reason. And the consequences for not obeying the rules of the road can be costly, including traffic citations, accident, injury, death, or even prison time. The rules are there to create order in what would otherwise be chaos. How about the rule of driving on the right side of the road? Without that rule, we would be running into each other on a fairly regular basis. Although it may never have occurred to you, riding and driving share many similarities. Both activities involve learning a skill that improves with practice. Both activities come with a set of rules that establishes order in what would otherwise be chaos. Both activities result in consequences when the rules are not followed. I mentioned the consequences of ignoring traffic rules, but when you ignore riding rules, the consequences can be almost as grave. The number one consequence is that people will not understand what you're trying to communicate. Another consequence is that if your message is misunderstood, it may alienate your reader and prejudice his opinion against you. Other consequences might occur, which include loss of employment, failure to obtain desired employment, loss of a sweetheart, or loss of some valuable business or family connection. But the number one consequence that most students fear involves red marks on an essay and low grades. Learning the rules now while you are in school and practicing the skill of communication until you master it may help you to avoid some of these other consequences related to loss of employment, relationships, or respect. Rules help us to live in harmony together in community with one another. They provide order in the midst of chaos. Today, I want to give you the ground rules for writing in this course. Think of me as your coach. I'm going to encourage you throughout the course and help you learn to play by the rules. You will be held responsible to follow these rules on all work submitted. In fact, I'm going to share with you several sets of rules. Rules of grammar, rules of documentation, and rules of assignment submission. I know, a list of rules is never fun. That is why you may want to view this visit number 2, several times during the semester. A review of this visit prior to each major writing assignment will help you to remember what your writing consultant expects from you. Students always want to know how the professor will grade the paper. In your course booklet, each assignment includes a checklist of key information that your writing consultant will be looking for as he grades your essay. If you use a checklist as a help in revising your essay, you will be much more likely to score well on the assignment. A grade on an assignment only reflects the student's ability to meet the standards of the course and of that particular assignment. So, for starters, I want to talk about grading categories. In general, each assignment will be assessed in 3 major areas of composition. Content involves what you have to say in your essay. Organization involves how you arrange what you have to say. And form involves the grammar mechanics and documentation of the essay. The content of your essay counts about 40% of the final grade. It must be analytic. It should not be a summary or a report or a mere description of a piece of literature. Writing a story summary, a report on what is in the story, or merely a description of what the author tells you is not analysis, and is the quickest way to earn a low score on the assignment. In visit number 3, I will go into great detail explain how to read, think, and write analytically. This is the primary skill you will master during this course. Under organization, you must follow the organizational patterns provided in the course booklet. Each assignment will explain, demonstrate, and give examples of the appropriate organizational patterns. Also, in Professor Visits 4, 6, and 8, I will go into great detail about the specific ways in which to organize analytical exposition. Following the correct organizational patterns counts about 35% of your final grade. The final 25% of your grade will be based on form, which includes correct grammar, mechanics, and documentation form. We assume you learn these skills of grammar and mechanics during your high school years. Certainly, if you have these kinds of errors, your consultant will have difficulty in understanding your content. If you know that you have difficulty writing without grammar errors, now's the time to learn about the Writing Center. These people can help you to overcome and remediate problems such as these. Now, as I begin the discussion of the grammar rules, you will hear me use the word standard. As I refer to appropriate diction, sentence structure, and mechanics, this means the level of word choice and grammar that you may see in a college-level textbook. This is the style of writing expected of you in college courses, and my job is to help you understand how to meet that standard. Grammar rule number 1, discuss literature in present tense. For example, if you're analyzing the character Sammy in John Updike's A&P, you might write that Sammy is impulsive instead of writing Sammy was impulsive. We call this convention the literary present. Even though the story is set in the past, even though the author wrote this story in the late 50s, even though you read the story in the past, you must write about it as if it were happening right now. If you have a problem with this in the beginning, write your essay completely and then go back during a revision phase and correct the verbs to present tense. Grammar rule number 2, give the author's full name the first time you mention it, but thereafter use only his last name, even if the author is female. When analyzing literature, you're examining how the author creates a particular effect or achieves a certain theme. Thus, you will use the author's name frequently. The author's name should appear in the theme statement, the thesis, and all topic sentences, as well as in other sentences. Grammar rule number 3, always place the title of a short story or poem in quotation marks. For example, Amy Tan's story, Two Kinds, would appear in quotation marks. Grammar rule number 4, always underline or italicize the title of a play, a film, or a book. For example, the play Hamlet and the book Catcher in the Rye would always be underlined. Grammar rule number 5. Now, rule number 5 is a really important rule and one you may have difficulty following. Do not use slang, contractions, or abbreviations. For example, the word kid used to mean child is considered slang. Don't use it unless you're really talking about a baby goat. Also, contractions such as don't are considered too conversational for standard academic writing. And finally, avoid abbreviations like TV and replace with a standard expression such as television. A good rule of thumb is to keep a dictionary at hand while you are writing. Definitions will include usage labels that will tell you if a word is slang, informal, or colloquial. If a word has any of these usage labels, that means it is too conversational for standard expository writing and should be reserved for spoken communication or very informal writing. To review the specific rules related to word choice, look in sections 16, 17, 18 in your Bedford Handbook. Grammar rule number 6. Do not use the indefinite personal pronouns. For example, avoid the use of we, us, our, you, or your to mean the reader of your essay or the public in general. Instead, Replace these pronouns with indefinite nouns such as most people or an individual. Even better would be to use a more specific indefinite term that relates to the content of your essay, such as the reader or a student. Grammar rule number 7. Do not make any reference to yourself, such as I, me, or my in your writing. All writing in this course should be in the objective voice. Grammar rule number 8. You should not begin a sentence with I believe that, I think that, or in my opinion. This kind of information is obvious to your reader and should not be used to preface any statement you make. Grammar rule number 9. Other expressions that should be avoided at the first of a sentence include it is, there is, and there are. These are empty expressions. They carry no information and often result in passive voice sentences. Be direct in your writing by placing nouns at the beginning of the sentence and use solid verbs that show action. Grammar rule number 10. Now this next rule is one you will probably need to review in your grammar book, and it has to do with agreement, either pronoun antecedent agreement or subject-verb agreement. Check out sections 21 and 22 in your grammar book on agreement. A brief review will probably bring you up to speed if you have experienced this problem before. Grammar rule number 11. This next rule, too, is one you may need to review in your grammar book or seek help for in the Writing Center. Avoid sentence illiteracies, fragments, run-ons, comma splices, and illogical structures. At the risk of belaboring this too much, you need to understand that major sentence structure errors result in a 10-point penalty per error. If your sentence does not make sense because of the way it is structured, you have a really big problem. If you've had these kinds of problems in Composition 1, I recommend that you obtain help in the Writing Center as soon as possible. These problems are addressed in sections 11, 19, and 20 in the Bedford Grammar Book. Make sure that you revise your work carefully and that all of your writing is logical. Grammar rule number 12. And now for the last but not least of nasty grammar rules, follow standard punctuation rules carefully. This is particularly true in punctuating parenthetical citations. Punctuation rules are reviewed in sections 32 through 39 in the Bedford book. Again, proofread and revise carefully for all kinds of problems I have mentioned in these 12 grammar rules. Now, put me on hold, stand up, run around the chair, take a deep breath, yell for a minute, then settle back down for Benson documentation and assignment submission guidelines. When I speak of documentation, I am talking about giving credit to other authors for their words or ideas. You will do this in every essay you write this semester, and you need to learn how to do it correctly. Using brief quotes from the literature in your writing helps to make your discussion more interesting, more specific, and more convincing. In fact, you will be required to use a certain number of quotes from your primary source in each assignment. Documentation rule number 1. The first rule of effective documentation is to quote only brief phrases or clauses that can be smoothly incorporated into your own sentence. Brief means no more than one typed line long, and incorporated into your own sentence means that you will have your own words that precede the quote and or follow the quote. You may quote only one or two words, a phrase, or a clause, but never an entire sentence. Documentation rule number 2. Rule 1 goes along with Rule 2 that says never quote a complete freestanding sentence. All quotes must be included within a sentence of your own. Documentation rule number 3. In addition, the quote should be carefully copied with the original spelling and punctuation from the text. If you need to add or change a word in the quote to make your sentence make sense, you should place brackets around the changed word. Documentation rule number 4. The quote itself should be enclosed in quotation marks. See Section 37 in the Bedford Handbook if you need to review quotation marks. Now, we need to talk about how to identify the source of the quote. The method is referred to as internal documentation or parenthetical citation, and the next 6 rules relate to that form of identification. Documentation rule number 5. Each quote should be identified by a parenthetical citation. This means that at the end of the sentence you will give the author's last name followed by a space and the page number of the quote from the text, and all of this will be enclosed in parentheses. For example, you might have a sentence such as, "She said yes," with the yes as the quote, and then a space, open parenthesis, author's last name, space, page number, close parenthesis, and then the final sentence period. Documentation rule number 6. The citation should appear at the end of the sentence rather than right after the quote when the quote is in the middle of the sentence. As you can see in the example, she said yes before I could stop her. In other words, do not let a citation interrupt the flow of your sentence. Always place the citation at the end of the sentence, no matter where the quote appears. Documentation rule number 7. The correct form following the last word of the sentence is open parenthesis, author's last name, page number with the number only and no little p to mean page, close parenthesis, and sentence period. Documentation rule number 8. Now, when quoting from a poem, instead of using the page number in your citation, use the line number from which you're quoting. Documentation rule number 9. When quoting from a play, use act, scene, and line number in the citation rather than the page number. Documentation rule number 10. Another thing to remember is that the first time you quote from an author in a paragraph, use the author's last name, a space, and then the page number. But thereafter, if you are quoting from the same author in that same paragraph, all you need is the page number. Documentation rule number 11. And finally, remember that a freestanding, complete quoted sentence is never acceptable. The purpose of documentation or giving citation is to provide your reader with the opportunity to consult your text, locate your quote easily, and read material before or after the quote for additional information. Careful documentation gives credibility to your work, and effective quoting makes your work more specific and convincing. Okay? Are you still with me? We have one more set of guidelines to cover. The rules of assignment submission will assure that your work is quickly processed and reaches your writing consultant without delay and is returned to you as soon as possible. But this can only occur if you follow these guidelines. The basic rules for preparing your essay include the following. Use standard white computer paper. Use a standard black 12-inch computer font. Use standard margins of 1 inch. Double-space your text. No single or triple-space papers are accepted. No handwritten papers accepted, except for those completed in the testing center. Required heading. All assignments should have the required heading in the upper left-hand corner of the assignment. This includes your name as it appears on your registration for the course, your writing consultant's name, your assignment name and number, and the date of the assignment. If you will look at page 67 in your Bedford Handbook, you will see a sample assignment that shows the form of the heading. Also remember to number the pages of your assignment. After organizing, drafting, writing, revising, proofreading, and making final corrections to your assignment, you will be ready to submit it. We ask that you follow the submission procedures carefully so that your paper will reach your writing consultant and be returned to you quickly. First, submission rule number 1, attach a self-addressed, self-adhesive mailing label with a paper clip to your essay. Personal pre-printed return address labels will work fine. You can also purchase blank labels and write your name and address on them. We must have a correct label to return your paper to you. Please do not send an envelope or a stamp, but do send the mailing label. Submission rule number 2. Place your completed essay and mailing label in a business-size envelope and address it to your writing consultant, the campus of your writing consultant. Do not attempt to turn in an essay that is not enclosed in an envelope. Do not use folders or binders. Do not turn in a loose paper. Make sure your essay is enclosed in an envelope and properly addressed. Although you may be turning your essay in on a different campus than your writing consultant's campus, the envelope should show the name of the assigned writing consultant and the name of the campus where he has an office. Submission rule number 3. In the upper left-hand corner of the envelope, place your name and the name of the course. Submission rule number 4. Finally, deliver the envelope to one of the locations listed on the inside front cover of your course booklet prior to the due date. Under no circumstances should you leave your essay in any location other than one of the 4 listed in the course booklet. If you do not follow the submission guidelines, your assignment may not reach your writing consultant by the deadline. And also, if the essay is not in an envelope or is missing the adhesive mailing label, it goes to the bottom of the grading stack. Also, we recommend that you do not attempt to mail your assignment. All assignments must reach the writing consultant by the due date, and often mailed assignments are delayed or lost. Please deliver your assignment in person. If you're still with me at this point, I can guess that your head is probably swimming with details. Do not despair. Everything I've said in this visit is written in black and white somewhere in your course booklet. And because you have this DVD in your possession, you can watch all or part of it again at any time. Now, with the rules behind us, we can go on to do some really interesting things with stories, poems, and plays. Thanks for staying with me, and I will see you again soon when we talk about how to analyze a short story in visit number 3. Goodbye for now.